The lecture hall of the Galactic Academy of Xenobiology stretched wide like the inside of a shell. Curved walls rose high above the students, covered with screens that could display anything from star maps to cellular structures. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, soft and blue like dawn on a water world. Professor Velthan stood at the center of the room. She was old for a Korvathi. Her scales faded from deep purple to pale lavender with age. She had taught at this academy for 300 years. She had seen students from 1,000 worlds sit in these seats. She believed she had seen everything. Today, she was teaching comparative genetics. It was a simple course, meant to show young species how different life forms built themselves at the most basic level. The Korvathi considered it entry-level material. Nothing complicated, nothing surprising. Each species carries its history in its genetic code, Velthan said. Her voice was calm and practiced. Your DNA tells the story of your evolution. It shows where you came from. It shows what shaped you. It shows what you survived. She touched a control panel, and the first image appeared on the main screen. A double helix of Netheri DNA rotated slowly, its structure clean and elegant. The Netheri genome, Velthan continued. Notice the precision. The Netheri were uplifted by the progenitors approximately 40,000 years ago. Their genetic code was cleaned and optimized during that process. Less than 1% of their DNA consists of what we call junk sequences or viral remnants. The Netheri students in the audience sat a little straighter with pride. Their silver skin caught the light as they exchanged satisfied glances. Velthan moved to the next example. The screen showed Korvathi DNA, dense and complex. My own species, she said. We evolved naturally on Korvath Prime, but we reached spacefaring capability early enough to edit out most genetic damage. Our viral load sits at approximately 1.3%. This is considered acceptable for a naturally evolved species. More images followed. The Drexi showed 0.1%. The Ulari showed 1.8. Each species had its number displayed prominently, and those numbers became a kind of score. Lower was better. Lower meant cleaner. Lower meant more advanced. Then Velthan reached the final entry on her list. And now, she said, we examine the newest species to join the galactic community. Humans from the planet Earth. She pressed the control, and human DNA appeared on the screen. At first glance, it looked similar to the others. The double helix turned slowly. The base pairs lined up in their familiar patterns. But then the analysis numbers appeared beside it, and the entire room went silent. 8%. 8% of human DNA consisted of endogenous retroviruses, viral remnants, genetic scars from ancient infections that had woven themselves permanently into the human code. A Netheri student made a sound of disgust, a sharp hiss through their breathing slits. Several Drexi looked away from the screen, as if they had seen something shameful. Even Velthan paused for a moment, her old eyes blinking slowly. As you can see, she said carefully, humans carry an unusually high viral load. This is not uncommon for species from high-gravity death worlds with active biospheres. It simply indicates that humans evolved under challenging conditions. She was being polite. Everyone in the room knew what she really meant. Humans were dirty. Humans were primitive. Humans had barely crawled out of their own biological sewage to reach the stars. In the back row, 3 human students sat together. They were exchange students, the first humans ever admitted to this academy. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was a geneticist from Japan. Marcus Cole was a xenobiologist from Nigeria. Priya Sharma was an epidemiologist from India. They had come here to learn, to share knowledge, to build bridges between Earth and the wider galaxy. Now they sat in silence as an entire room looked at their DNA like it was a crime scene. Professor, Yuki said. Her voice was quiet but clear. May I ask a question? Velthan turned toward her. The old Korvathi's expression was patient, but distant, the look of someone humoring a child. Of course, she said. Questions are encouraged. Yuki stood up slowly. She was small compared to most of the alien students, barely reaching the shoulder of the nearest Netheri. But she held herself straight, and her eyes never left the professor's face. You said our viral load indicates challenging conditions, Yuki said. You're right, but I was wondering if you knew what those viruses actually were. If you knew their names, Vulthan's head tilted slightly. Their names. Yes, each of those viral sequences has an origin. Each one represents a specific pathogen that infected our ancestors millions of years ago. Each one killed enough of us that it became permanently embedded in our genetic code. Yuki paused. I was wondering if your analysis included that information. The names, the dates, the death tolls. The room had gone very quiet. Several alien students leaned forward in their seats, curious despite themselves. Vulthan looked at her display panel, then back at Yuki. The analysis focuses on the percentage of viral material, not individual sequences. The specific origins are not considered relevant to this course. They're relevant to us, Marcus said. He stood up beside Yuki, his tall frame unfolding from the small seat. Every one of those sequences tells a story. We know them all. We remember them all. Perhaps, Vulthan said slowly, you could share some of this information with the class? It might provide useful context. She said it like a challenge, like she expected the humans to fumble and fail. She had taught for 300 years. She had seen young species try to defend their primitive origins before. They always fell silent eventually. They always admitted their inferiority. Yuki smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone about to open a door that could never be closed again. Retrovirus K102, she said, integrated into the primate genome approximately 25 million years ago. Based on genetic analysis and population modeling, we estimate it killed approximately 60% of all primates alive at the time. Our ancestors survived. The virus became part of us. She took a breath and continued. Retrovirus HERV-H, integrated approximately 40 million years ago. Death toll unknown, but the genetic bottleneck suggests near extinction. Our ancestors survived. The virus became part of us. Marcus picked up the recitation. Retrovirus HERV-W. This one is special. It integrated approximately 25 million years ago, but we didn't just survive it. We captured it. We turned it into a tool. Today, the proteins from HERV-W are essential for placental development in human pregnancy. Without this virus, humans could not reproduce. The Netheri student, who had hissed earlier, now sat frozen in his seat. His silver skin had gone pale. Priya stood up to join her colleagues. Retrovirus HERV-K. Multiple integration events over millions of years. Each one represents a separate plague. Each plague killed millions. Each time, our ancestors survived and absorbed the virus into their DNA. She looked around the room at all the alien faces watching her. You see 8% and you think contamination, she said. You think primitive. You think dirty. But we look at that 8% and we see something else. We see a war memorial. We see the names of our dead written in our own cells. We carry our ancestors inside us, Professor. The ones who survived plague after plague after plague. The ones who refused to die. The room was completely silent. Even Vulthan stood motionless, her old scales catching the blue light. Finally, a young Olari student raised one trembling appendage. How many? He asked. How many plagues are written in your DNA? Yuki turned to look at him. Her eyes were calm, but very old, older than her young face should allow. We have identified over 98,000 endogenous viral elements in the human genome, she said. Not all of them represent separate plagues. Some are fragments. Some are duplicates. But our best estimate suggests that humans survived at least several thousand extinction-level viral events. Over the course of our evolution, she paused to let that number sink in. Several thousand, she repeated, each one capable of wiping out our entire species. Each one failed. We survived them all, and we remember every single one. Professor Vulthan finally found her voice. It came out rough and uncertain, nothing like her confident lecture tone from before. How is that possible? She asked. How could any species survive that many extinction events? Yuki looked at her to fellow humans. Marcus nodded. Priya gave a small smile. That's exactly the right question, Professor, Yuki said. And with your permission, we would like to answer it. We would like to tell you the real story of human evolution, not the clean version you learned from our diplomatic summaries. The real version, the one written in blood and virus and bone. She gestured at the screen where human DNA still rotated slowly. its 8% viral load glowing like a wound. You wanted to teach comparative genetics today, Yuki said. You wanted to show your students where different species came from. So let us show you where humans came from. Let us show you what we survived. And then maybe you'll understand why we're still standing here today, asking questions about our own genetic code in a classroom full of species who think they know what survival means. Velthan looked at her students. Every alien face was turned toward the three humans standing in the back row. Curiosity had replaced disgust. Fear had replaced contempt. Yuki stood at the center of the lecture hall, bathed in the soft blue light that came from the curved walls. Behind her, the human genome still rotated on the main screen, its 8% viral load marked in red like warning signs on a map. The alien students watched her with expressions she had learned to recognize over the past months. At the academy, the Nethri looked uncomfortable, their silver skin tight against their bones. The Korvathi sat very still, their scales pressed flat against their bodies. The Ulari had pulled their appendages close, making themselves small. They were afraid, not of her specifically, but of what she represented, of what she was about to tell them. Good, Yuki thought. They should be afraid. Fear meant they were finally paying attention. Let me start with something simple, she said. A number. 70,000. She touched the control panel, and the main screen changed. The DNA helix shrank to one corner, replaced by a timeline that stretched back millions of years. 70,000 years ago, Yuki continued, the human population on Earth dropped to approximately 10,000 individuals, maybe fewer. Some estimates say as low as 1,000 breeding pairs. Our entire species, the ancestors of every human alive today, could have fit in this lecture hall. A murmur ran through the audience. The Ulari student who had spoken earlier raised his appendage again. What caused this? He asked. War, famine, a supervolcano, Yuki said. Mount Toba in what is now Indonesia. It erupted with a force you cannot imagine. It blocked out the sun for years. It created a volcanic winter that lasted a decade. Crops failed, animals died, and humans, who were already struggling to survive on a hostile planet, nearly went extinct. She paused to let them absorb this. But we didn't go extinct, she said. A few thousand of us survived. We huddled in caves. We ate whatever we could find. We kept each other warm through the endless winter. And when the sun finally came back, we walked out of those caves and started again. Marcus stepped forward to stand beside her. That's just one bottleneck, he said. One near-extinction event. Our genetic record shows at least a dozen major population crashes over the last few million years. Each time, humanity was pushed to the edge of oblivion. Each time, we refused to fall. But the viruses, a Nethri student said. Her voice was sharp with confusion. What about the viruses? How do they connect to population crashes? Priya joined her colleagues at the center of the room. The viruses were often the cause, she said. Or they made everything worse. When your population drops to a few thousand individuals, you lose genetic diversity. You become vulnerable to disease. And on Earth, disease was always waiting. She touched the control panel, and new data appeared on the screen. Charts and graphs showing infection rates, mortality estimates, genetic bottlenecks. Consider what it means for a virus to become part of your DNA, Priya said. It doesn't happen easily. The virus has to infect your reproductive cells. It has to integrate itself into your genetic code without killing you. It has to pass to your children, and their children, and their children after that. For a virus to become permanent, it has to infect so many people, so many times, that it becomes unavoidable. She pointed at the red markers on the human genome. Each of these sequences represents a pandemic that lasted thousands of years, maybe millions. Each one killed so many of our ancestors that the survivors literally could not escape the viral DNA. It became part of the human inheritance, a genetic scar that would never heal. The lecture hall had gone very quiet. Even Professor Velthan stood motionless at the edge of the room, her old eyes fixed on the three humans. Yuki took over again. Let me give you some specific examples. Things your databases might not include. She pulled up a new display showing a complex viral structure. This is HERVK, one of the most recent additions to our genome. It integrated approximately 200,000 years ago, right around the time modern humans first appeared. We don't know exactly what the original virus did, but based on related viruses, we think it attacked the immune system. It would have caused fevers, organ failure, death within days. She traced the viral structure with her finger. But here's the interesting part. HERVK didn't just kill us. It changed us. The humans who survived carried altered genes that made their immune system stronger, more aggressive, better at recognizing and destroying foreign invaders. In a very real sense, HERVK helped create the modern human immune response. Marcus pulled up another display. And it didn't stop there. Humans don't just survive viruses. We learn from them, we adapt, and sometimes we steal their weapons. He highlighted a specific gene sequence. This is syncytin, he said. It's a protein that's essential for human pregnancy. Without it, the placenta cannot form properly. Without it, no human baby could ever be born. And do you know where syncytin came from? He looked around the room at the alien faces. A virus, he said. Millions of years ago, a retrovirus infected our ancestors. It was probably deadly. It probably killed thousands or millions of primates. But somewhere along the way, a mutation happened. The viral gene that allowed the virus to fuse cells together got captured by the human genome. And instead of using it to spread infection, our bodies started using it to build placentas. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. We turned a weapon of death into a tool for creating life. That's what humans do. That's what we've always done. The Korvathi student in the front row made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a cough. This is impossible, he said. No species could survive such constant assault. You should have evolved better defenses. You should have developed immunity. Priya laughed softly. We did develop immunity, over and over again. But viruses evolve too. They change. They adapt. Every time we built a wall, they found a way around it. So we built another wall, and another, and another. She pulled up a timeline showing the arms race between human immune systems and viral evolution. For millions of years, humans and viruses have been locked in a war without end. We die, we survive. We adapt, they change. They attack again. We die, we survive. We adapt. The cycle never stops. It never rests. It never gives us a moment of peace. She turned to face the Korvathi student directly. You ask why we didn't evolve perfect immunity? Because there is no such thing. Perfection is a target that keeps moving. The best we can do is keep fighting, keep learning, keep adapting. And that's exactly what we did. Yuki stepped forward again. But here's what you're missing, she said. The viruses in our DNA aren't the whole story. They're not even most of the story. The viruses we absorbed are just the ones that became permanent, the ones we couldn't shake off. But for every virus that entered our genome, there were 1,000 others that we fought and defeated and forgot. She pulled up a new display. This one showed a much longer list of pathogens, stretching down the screen in tiny text. Smallpox, she read, killed an estimated 500 million humans over the course of history. We wiped it out in 1980. Plague killed at least 200 million humans in multiple pandemics. We developed antibiotics and quarantine protocols. Malaria, still killing humans today. But we've reduced deaths by 90% in the last century. Influenza, HIV, tuberculosis, cholera, typhus, measles, polio. She kept reading, name after name, disease after disease. Each of these killed millions of us. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions. And each time, we thought it might be the end. Each time, we watched our families die, our children die, our cities become tombs. And each time, we buried our dead, mourned our losses, and started working on a cure. Marcus spoke up. You want to know the real difference between humans and other species? It's not our genetic code. It's not our viral load. It's the fact that we refuse to accept death as the final answer. He pointed at the list of diseases on the screen. Every one of these killers is either extinct or controlled. Not because we evolved natural immunity. Not because we waited for nature to solve the problem. But because we studied the diseases. We learned how they worked. We developed vaccines and medicines and treatments. We fought back with science and determination and sheer stubborn refusal to die. A Drexy student raised her hand tentatively. But why? She asked. Why fight so hard? If your planet was so dangerous, why not leave? Why not find somewhere safer? Yuki turned to look at her. The Drexy was young, her spotted skin still bright with youth. She had probably never experienced real hardship in her life. We couldn't leave, Yuki said gently. For millions of years, we were trapped on Earth. We had no ships, no space travel, no way to escape. Earth was our home, and we had to make it work. We had to survive, no matter what the planet threw at us. She paused. But I think even if we could have left, we wouldn't have. Earth made us who we are. Every plague, every disaster, every extinction event that almost killed us also made us stronger, smarter, more resilient. We are the children of a world that tried to murder us for 4 billion years. And we loved it anyway. We loved it enough to stay. Professor Velthan finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost trembling. How many? She asked. Across all of human history, how many of your people died from disease? Priya turned to face the old Korvathi. We don't have exact numbers. Record keeping is only a few thousand years old, but our best estimates suggest that infectious. Word spread quickly through the academy. By the end of the first hour, students and faculty from other departments had gathered outside the xenobiology lecture hall. By the end of the second hour, the academy director herself had arrived, along with representatives from the Galactic Council who happened to be on campus. For an unrelated meeting, the lecture hall that had started with 30 students now held nearly 200 observers. They stood along the walls, sat in the aisles, crowded around the doorways. Some watched through holographic projectors connected from other rooms. At the center of it all, 3 humans continued their presentation. Professor Velthan had given up any pretense of controlling the class. She sat in the front row with the other Korvathi faculty, her old scales flat against her body, her eyes never leaving the main screen. Yuki was explaining human immune response, while Marcus and Priya pulled up supporting data. The human immune system operates on multiple levels, Yuki said. The first line of defense is physical. Our skin is a barrier. Our mucous membranes trap pathogens. Our stomach acid destroys most organisms that enter through food or water. She pulled up a diagram showing the layers of human defense. But those are just the outer walls. Inside, we have armies. White blood cells that hunt and destroy invaders. Antibodies that mark targets for destruction. Fever responses that raise our body temperature to levels that kill pathogens. Inflammation that floods infected areas with defensive cells. A Korvathi military officer near the back of the room leaned forward. He wore the insignia of a fleet commander, and his scales were dark with age and authority. These defensive mechanisms, he said, how do they compare to other species? Marcus turned to address him directly. Most species have similar basic defenses, but humans have something extra. Our immune system doesn't just respond to threats. It learns from them. It remembers. He pulled up a new diagram showing human immune memory. When a human survives an infection, our immune system creates memory cells. These cells can live for decades, sometimes for our entire lives. They remember the specific pathogen that attacked us. They remember how to defeat it. If that pathogen ever returns, our immune system can destroy it within hours. Sometimes before we even show symptoms, the fleet commander's eyes narrowed. Natural vaccination, he said. Exactly, Marcus replied. Every disease a human survives makes them stronger. Every infection teaches our body new ways to fight. Over millions of years, this learning system has become incredibly sophisticated. Human immune memory can recognize and respond to pathogens we've never encountered before, just because they share characteristics with something our ancestors fought. The academy director stepped forward. She was a Netheri, tall and silver, with the bearing of someone who had spent her life in positions of authority. You mentioned earlier that human DNA contains viral sequences that you've turned into tools, she said. Can you elaborate on that? Priya took over. Of course. The most famous example is syncytin, which I mentioned earlier. But there are others. She pulled up a list of co-opted viral genes. HERV-W contributes to placental development and also plays a role in our immune response. Several HERV-K sequences help regulate gene expression during embryonic development. We've even found evidence that some viral sequences contribute to our neurological function. A murmur ran through the crowd. The Nethri director raised her hand for silence. "You're saying that viral infections made humans smarter?" she asked. "We're saying that humans didn't just survive viral infections," Priya replied. "We absorbed them. We integrated them. We turned enemy code into useful tools. Our genome is like a museum of ancient wars, and we've repurposed the weapons of our enemies to serve our own needs." A young Alari scientist pushed through the crowd. "This is extraordinary," he said. "I've studied xenobiology for 30 years, and I've never heard of anything like this. Most species either fight off infections or die from them. The idea of incorporating hostile genetic material and turning it beneficial, it goes against everything we understand about evolution." Yuki smiled. "That's because most species weren't forged in the same fire we were. Earth is what we call a Category 5 death world. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, active geology, aggressive biosphere. Everything on Earth is trying to kill everything else, all the time. Under those conditions, evolution becomes desperate, creative, willing to try anything to survive." She paused and looked around the room at all the alien faces. "You want to know why humans are different? It's because we never had the luxury of being safe. We never had the option of waiting for help. We had to solve every problem ourselves with whatever tools we could find. And sometimes, the only tools available were the same viruses that were trying to destroy us." The fleet commander stood up from his seat. His dark scales caught the light as he moved forward through the crowd. "I have a question," he said. "A military question." The room went quiet. Everyone knew what the Korvathi military represented. They were the enforcers of galactic law, the ones who fought wars and maintained order across 1,000 worlds. When a Korvathi fleet commander asked a question, people listened. "You've described a species hardened by millions of years of biological warfare," the commander said. "A species whose immune systems are trained to recognize and destroy any pathogen they encounter. A species that carries the genetic memory of thousands of plagues." He fixed his eyes on Yuki. "What happens when humans encounter new diseases? Diseases from other worlds? Diseases that evolved separately from Earth's biosphere?" Yuki met his gaze without flinching. "We adapt," she said simply. "It takes time. We might get sick. Some of us might die. But our immune systems are designed to learn from new threats. Within a generation or two, human populations develop resistance to almost any pathogen." The commander took another step forward. "And what about the reverse? What happens when humans carry Earth diseases to other worlds?" The room went very still. Every alien face turned toward the three humans with new expressions. Expressions of dawning understanding. Expressions of fear. Marcus stepped forward to answer. "We carry a lot of microorganisms," he admitted. "Our bodies are home to trillions of bacteria, viruses, and other microscopic life forms. Most of them are harmless to us. Some are even beneficial. But we understand your concern." He pulled up a display showing human biosecurity protocols. "When humans first achieved space travel, one of our first priorities was developing quarantine procedures. We knew our biology could be dangerous to other ecosystems. We created isolation protocols, decontamination chambers, and strict medical screening for anyone traveling off-world." The fleet commander studied the display with sharp eyes. "These protocols," he said. "How effective are they?" "Very effective," Marcus replied. "In the 200 years since humans joined the galactic community, there have been 0 major disease outbreaks traced to human contact. We take biosecurity seriously because we understand the cost of plague. We've lived through it countless times. We would never deliberately expose another species to that horror." A Drexy medical researcher near the front of the room spoke up. "But accidentally? What if your protocols fail? What if a human pathogen escapes quarantine?" Priya answered this question. "It's theoretically possible," she said, "but unlikely. Human pathogens evolved to infect humans. They're specialized for our biology, our body temperature, our cellular chemistry. Most of them simply can't survive in alien hosts. The few that might be able to cross species barriers are the ones we monitor most carefully." She pulled up data showing human disease tracking systems. We maintain databases of every known pathogen on Earth, she explained. We track mutations, we monitor outbreaks, and we update our containment protocols constantly. When a new disease appears, we sequence its genome within days. We develop treatments and vaccines as fast as any species in the galaxy. Faster, in most cases. The fleet commander stroked his chin scales thoughtfully. You've turned your weakness into strength, he said. Your constant exposure to disease has made you experts in fighting disease. Yes, Yuki said. We learned from every plague that tried to destroy us. We built institutions dedicated to understanding disease and developing cures. We created international organizations to coordinate global health responses. We share medical knowledge freely because we know that a disease anywhere is a threat everywhere. She looked around the room at all the watching faces. Humans have spent our entire existence fighting for survival against microscopic enemies. We've gotten very good at it. And now that we've joined the galactic community, we're willing to share everything we've learned. The Academy director raised her voice to address the crowd. I think we're all beginning to understand the significance of what we've heard today, she said. The human genome, which we initially viewed as contaminated or primitive, is actually a record of extraordinary survival, a testament to a species that refused to surrender. She turned to face the three human students. But I have one more question, she said, and I think everyone in this room wants to know the answer. Given your history, given everything you've survived, given the biological weapons you could theoretically deploy against other species, why haven't you? Why have humans chosen cooperation? The fleet commander slowly sat back down. His expression had changed. The suspicion was gone, replaced by something that. The fleet commander slowly sat back down. His expression had changed. The suspicion was gone, replaced by something that 3 days after the presentation in the xenobiology lecture hall. Yuki sat alone in the Academy's meditation garden. The garden was designed for Nethery relaxation, with silver plants that chimed softly in artificial wind and pools of mercury that reflected the stars. She found it peaceful, even if it wasn't designed for human biology. She heard footsteps behind her. Human footsteps. Marcus and Priya appeared from between the silver trees, their faces serious. The message came, Marcus said. Yuki nodded slowly. She had been expecting this. Where? Kethra 7, Priya replied. A mining colony on the outer rim. Population of 12 million Drexy. They're reporting rapid spread of an unknown pathogen. Fever, respiratory failure, death within 48 hours. Current mortality rate is 30% and climbing. Yuki closed her eyes for a moment. 30% mortality. She thought of Earth's history, of the Black Death that had killed 1 in 3 Europeans, of the plagues that had emptied cities and ended civilizations. When do we leave? She asked. Marcus checked his datapad. A transport ship is being prepared. The Galactic Council has requested human assistance specifically. They want our expertise in epidemic response. Priya sat down beside Yuki on the silver bench. The ironic thing is, 3 days ago they thought our genetic code was contaminated. Now they're asking us to save 12 million lives. Yuki opened her eyes and looked up at the artificial stars scattered across the garden's ceiling. They asked because we showed them who we really are, not our weaknesses, our strengths, the same strengths that let us survive everything Earth threw at us. She stood up and brushed silver pollen from her clothes. Let's go save some lives. The transport ship arrived at Kethra 7 8 hours later. Through the viewports, Yuki could see the colony planet turning slowly beneath them. It looked peaceful from orbit, blue-green with clouds, dotted with the lights of mining settlements. But she knew what was happening on the surface. She had seen it before in historical records, in the stories passed down through human generations. The panic, the fear, the bodies piling up faster than they could be buried. The ship's captain, a grizzled Korvathi with battle scars on his scales, approached the 3 humans. We've received an update from the surface, he said. The death toll has reached 800,000. Medical facilities are overwhelmed. The Drexy government has declared a state of emergency. Yuki nodded. What do we know about the pathogen? It appears to be a viral hemorrhagic fever. similar to diseases in your own historical records. The Drexy have no natural immunity and no treatment protocols. Marcus was already pulling up data on his tablet. Hemorrhagic fever. Incubation period, 3 to 5 days. Transmission method, respiratory droplets and direct contact with bodily fluids. Marcus looked at Yuki and Priya. Classic pandemic profile. Fast spread, high mortality, limited treatment options. This is going to be bad. Priya was studying the genetic sequence of the virus that the Drexy had transmitted to the ship. The structure is unusual, she said. I don't recognize the protein configurations. This might be something new, something that mutated from a local pathogen. Yuki leaned over to look at her screen. Can we develop a treatment? Maybe. We'll need samples. We'll need to understand how it attacks Drexy cells. It could take weeks. They don't have weeks. I know. The ship descended through the atmosphere, passing through clouds that looked white and clean from above, but carried death in every microscopic droplet. They landed at the capital city's main hospital, a sprawling complex that had been converted into an emergency treatment center. What Yuki saw when she stepped off the ship would stay with her forever. The hospital grounds were covered with temporary shelters, thousands of them, each containing Drexy patients in various stages of the disease. Medical workers in protective gear moved between the shelters, but there were too few of them and too many sick. The air smelled of disinfectant and death. A Drexy official met them at the landing pad. Her spotted skin was pale with exhaustion, and her hands trembled as she extended them in greeting. "You are the humans," she said. "The disease specialists." "Yes," Yuki replied. "We're here to help." The official's eyes filled with tears. "We don't know what to do. Our doctors have never seen anything like this. Every treatment we try fails. Our people are dying by the thousands, and we cannot stop it." Yuki reached out and took the official's trembling hands in her own. It was a human gesture, one that the Drexy might not understand, but she did it anyway. "Listen to me," Yuki said gently. "Humans have faced plagues like this many times. We have survived them all. We know what to do, and we are going to teach you." She turned to Marcus and Priya. "We need to set up a command center. Contact tracing, quarantine protocols, palliative care for the dying. We need to slow the spread while we work on a treatment." Marcus nodded and immediately began coordinating with the hospital staff. Priya headed for the laboratory facilities with her equipment, ready to begin analyzing the virus. Yuki stayed with the Drexy official. "How many doctors do you have available?" she asked. "Perhaps 2,000, but many of them are sick themselves. The virus does not spare healers. Then we need volunteers. Anyone who is willing to help with basic care, feeding patients, keeping them hydrated, providing comfort. They won't need medical training. They just need courage." The official looked uncertain. "Our people are afraid. They see the disease and they run. They do not want to risk infection." Yuki understood. She remembered the histories of human plagues, the way fear drove people apart, the way communities shattered under the weight of death. "I'll show them," she said. "I'll show them that it's possible to help without dying. I'll show them what humans do in times of plague." For the next 3 weeks, Yuki and her colleagues worked without rest. They established quarantine zones around infected areas, limiting the spread of the disease. They set up sanitation stations and taught the Drexy how to properly dispose of contaminated materials. They created triage systems that prioritized patients based on severity and likelihood of survival. But most importantly, they walked into the plague wards themselves. The Drexy watched in amazement as the 3 humans moved through the shelters of dying patients, providing care, taking samples, offering comfort. The humans wore protective equipment, but they did not hesitate. They did not flinch from the sight of death. They worked methodically, professionally, as if fighting plagues was the most natural thing in the world, which, for humans, it was. Word spread through the colony. The strange visitors from Earth, the species with the contaminated genetic code, were fighting the plague alongside the Drexy. They were not afraid. They were not running away. They were staying, and they were helping. Volunteers began to appear. At first just a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Drexy who had been paralyzed by fear found their courage when they saw the humans working. If these strange creatures from a death world could face the plague, then so could they. After 2 weeks, Priya made a breakthrough. She identified a protein in the virus that was vulnerable to a specific enzyme compound. It wasn't a cure, but it was a treatment. Patients who received the compound in the early stages of infection had a much higher survival rate. The death toll began to slow. After 3 weeks, the epidemic was under control. New infections were rare. The treatment was being manufactured in emergency facilities across the colony. The final count was just over 2 million dead, a terrible number, but far fewer than the 12 million that had seemed inevitable. On the day the humans prepared to leave, a ceremony was held in their honor. The entire surviving population of the capital city gathered in the main square, their spotted faces turned upward toward the platform where Yuki, Marcus, and Priya stood. The Drexy official, who had greeted them on their first day, stepped forward to speak. When the plague came, she said, "We thought we were going to die. All of us. We had no weapons against this enemy. No defenses. No hope." She turned to look at the 3 humans. "Then you came. Species we had never heard of. Species whose genetic code we once dismissed as primitive and contaminated. And you saved us." She bowed deeply, the Drexy gesture of profound respect. "We asked you why. Why did you risk your lives for strangers? Why did you fight our plague as if it were your own? And your answer will stay with me forever." She straightened and addressed the crowd. "They said they do it because they remember, because their ancestors died from plagues just like ours, and they carry those memories in their very cells. They said they would never let another species face that horror alone if they could prevent it." She turned back to the humans. "You call yourselves plague survivors, but we will call you something else. We will call you plague fighters, and we will never forget what you did for us." The crowd erupted in cheers. Thousands of voices raised in gratitude. Thousands of spotted faces wet with tears. Yuki stepped forward to respond. "We carry our dead in our DNA," she said. 8% of our genetic code comes from viruses we survived. Every one of those sequences represents ancestors who suffered and died so that we could live." She looked out at the crowd of survivors. "Today, we honored those ancestors.